the DeFUD Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the DeFUD Podcast. Today we are excited to have Kamal Shah, CEO of ProfitSecurity.ai. Kamal is a serial entrepreneur, was a founding member of the management team at Clearwell, which was acquired by Symantec in 2011. Kamal also led products and marketing at Sky High Networks, which was acquired by McAfee in 2018. Kamal was also the CEO of StackRox, which was acquired by Red Hat in 2021. Kamal, I think it'll be great if you added a few words on Profit AI, but I'm going to take a shot at it. Profit is delivering autonomous AI agents that augment security operations teams by automating the manual, tedious, and repetitive tasks of triaging, investigating, and responding to alerts. The end result is lower mean time to response and allow human analysts to focus on more critical security issues.
That's well said, Ashish. We should use that in our marketing. But first and foremost, many thanks to both of you for having me on your podcast. The genesis behind Profit Security was that the number one complaint that I heard from customers at StackRox and at Sky High Networks was too many alerts, too many false positives. And as you both know, as being operators and practitioners in this industry, this is a decade-old problem, right? It's not a new problem. And when LLMs came about, and when we all had experienced the ChatGPT moment in November of 2022, the first thought that went through my mind is, hey, can we leverage AI agents to automate the manual, tedious task of triaging, investigating, and responding to alerts, and really free up security teams from these mundane tasks to focus on other strategic security initiatives that truly move the needle in security. So that was the genesis of the idea. And then, we went through all the steps that you go through to validate it, to understand where existing solutions fell short, and then raise money, raise a team, and here we are.
Wow. And in fact, actually, Kamal, I have to say, you've been brewing up this idea back during your StackRox days, right? When we're thinking about what is the right way to penetrate the security industry. And back then, people weren't even talking about agents, right? So you had the foresight of looking at the problem from your tenure in security and seeing what is the best way to tackle that. So maybe for our listeners, we can start with how would you define an AI-driven security operations center or an AI SOC? And can you tell us maybe the difference between an AI SOC and a traditional SOC?
Yeah, I mean, if you just break down the SOC, right? There are three functions that they do. There is an element of, hey, let's make sure that we are capturing all the telemetry, the log data from different data sources, so that we can do things with it, right? So that's the first step. Once you have that telemetry, then the second step is, okay, how can we go and then analyze that data to detect threats and generate alerts for us to go investigate? And then the third step is, when those alerts are generated, how do you go triage and investigate those alerts to understand, hey, is that normal behavior? Is it a false positive? Is it benign, or is it truly malicious? So at a very high level, I'm oversimplifying what a SOC does, but that's kind of the process. And today, there are a lot of manual steps involved in the last phase of it, which is triaging and investigating alerts, which is where we felt the pain was the greatest. So if you think about what happens today in a SOC, is when an alert is fired, and these alerts are fired from all the security tools that you have in your environment, right? You got endpoint, you got identity, you got cloud, you got network, you have SaaS security. And on top of that, you have custom detections that you have written for your environment as well. And those alerts make to the security operations team, and they have to figure out, what's real, what's not. And they have to go, in many cases, log into different security tools to gather the data, the context needed to investigate that alert, document the information, cut and paste information from different tools into Excel, put together a timeline, and then 30, 40 minutes later say, this is a false positive, and document it into a case management tool. And there's a lot of manual processes that go in that. And what we are doing, what autonomous, I don't want to say autonomous, but what an AI-powered SOC would do is automate these manual tedious tasks so that imagine instead of taking 30, 40 minutes, in 3, 4 minutes, all the analysis is done and you have AI agents that recommend an answer to say, this is malicious or this is benign. And then analysts have the ability to review that information to say, okay, if they want to. In some cases, they trust the AI to just close out the alert itself. So that's essentially what it is. And if you compare it to traditional approaches to solving this problem, right? What we've seen is that enterprise take one of 3 approaches. The first approach is, hey, I'm just going to ignore low and medium severity alerts. And that itself is a problem because there could be low and slow attacks that go undetected. The second issue is, okay, I'm going to go and outsource this to an MSSP, managed security service provider. And that is also fraught with lots of challenges because you're essentially outsourcing it to a third party that doesn't have all the context for your organization. They have the same challenges that you have in terms of training, onboarding, retaining humans to do the tasks. And the third approach is to leverage automation tools like SOAR tools to automate some of the workflows. And that also has fell short, right? So that's kind of how I would juxtapose what traditional SOC looks like, past attempts to solve the problem, and how AI truly is a game changer to solve this particular problem.
So look, next question. So look, Kamal, right? There's some, I would say, confusion now in the industry between AI SOCs, right? And this net new concept of an AI MDR, right? So kind of before we move on, like, can you maybe help us dispel, like, what is the difference between the two, and where is human in the loop involved when you're talking about the two?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And it really comes down to how an organization thinks about security operations, right? So you have a set of organizations that run security operations teams in-house, and these are typically small, mostly medium and large and enterprise customers that run a SOC themselves. And for them, what they're trying to do is instead of outsource it to an AI MDR, they want to bring that capability in-house and augment their existing teams with AI capabilities that can be a force multiplier for their teams. Now, there is a segment of the market that are typically small businesses that don't have investments in security operations. And for them, the choice is, okay, do I use a traditional MDR or can I use an AI MDR, AI-powered MDR that can offer me similar services, but at a substantially lower price point because they're leveraging AI instead of humans to provide those services. Now, the second question around the role of humans, I think, humans play a very important role in security operations. And the goal of an AI SOC analyst is not to replace humans. It's not to be get to an autonomous AI SOC, but it's really to augment humans. Humans provide tremendous context and expertise, and they will always be needed. And what an AI SOC analyst does is it really automates the manual, tedious tasks so that the analyst can focus on what they do better, which is provide the security expertise and the security context that's required within an organization. That's kind of how we think about it. That's how our customers think about it. And it's very much about up-leveling your game and letting your analysts focus on security tasks that truly matter versus being a data jockey and trying to go get data from different tools and doing repetitive tasks to investigate alerts.
Yeah, I really like how you disambiguated these two topics, right? So on the theme of up-leveling your existing analysts, now, of course, when you started, we weren't even talking about agents, right? But of course, now there's quite a few players in the AI SOC space. So can you tell us, what differentiates Profit's approach in addressing traditional SOC challenges?
There are two ways to answer the question. One is the way we are solving this compared to traditional approaches, whether it's leveraging a SOAR tool, is that you have to go and codify the playbooks, you build out the integrations, and you have to maintain them. So it's quite a bit of uplift that a customer has to do to deploy to solve this problem in the traditional way, which is to leverage SOAR tools. with AI agents, we are up and running in a customer's environment in less than 30 minutes. So we were inspired by what Wiz was able to do in the early days. And since it's top of mind for a lot of folks, we've tried to create a similar experience where during the onboarding process, within 30 minutes, we are already investigating alerts in a customer's environment. Now, with regards to competitors or other AI SOC analysts in the market, it's a pretty early market, so it's hard to have many data points to talk about differentiators. We believe that the differentiation in this market is going to fall in three areas. One area is going to be around time to value and the overall experience. And we've talked about it, what we do and how we're trying to learn from Wiz's experience and create that aha moment in the first 60 minutes of conversation with the customer. The second piece is going to be around the depth, quality, and quality of the investigation. Are you asking the right questions, and are you thoroughly investigating an alert? And you can talk about this in the context of accuracy of the investigations. And then the third piece of it, I think, is going to be around, do you support my security stack? And as you know, a security stack is quite fragmented. And every customer has a different cloud security vendor versus network versus endpoint or DLP or you name it. And so do you support my security stack out of the box? And I think that those are the three dimensions where differentiation will play out in this market.
I think you're absolutely right there, Kamal. Those broad vectors in security matter a lot, and they matter even more so in the operations space, because security teams often hold dear to their heart the accuracy issue as well as the coverage issue, which comes on the integration side of the house that you're talking about. And
That's right.
The wow factor on time to value, because nobody has time to sit there and wait for 3 days in that sense, right? So I think you're bang on there. I have go ahead.
Yeah, Ashish, on that point, there are other solutions that say, hey, look, we are going to be a browser plugin, and I bring this up because you were the founding CISO of UiPath, and this is familiar to you. But there, you install a browser plugin, and they have to go and they'll watch what a security analyst does, and they'll play it back. And I think that made perfect sense maybe a decade ago when UiPath was founded. But today, with AI agents, it doesn't seem like the right approach. Now, who knows what the right answer is? Time will tell. But the approach that you take to solving this problem also matters. And I truly believe that the progress we are seeing in foundational models every 6 weeks, it feels like the agentic framework is the way to go.
Yeah, I think it's agentic frameworks are expanding in their own universes and bringing new capabilities every single day. So it's super exciting to actually have a, tailwind like that supporting a great cause of cybersecurity operations. For the sake of the audience, maybe, and generally for sort of establishing clarity, the core value prop is to remove fatigue. We know there's tedious work with fatigue, and there's only two approaches. You scale the human, or you outsource the human to a lower cost place, or you use AI to help the human, right? But maybe more elementary question is, why is there so much fatigue? What is the root cause of the fatigue? So that we can see what is the best approach to solve it. For that sake, I think we should talk about what fatigue means in the context of a SOC.
Yeah, look, I think that's an interesting question. And when we were initially thinking about this problem and how to solve the problem, we often wondered, hey, is the answer to go and just get rid of alerts or focus on detection engineering and write alerts so that they are specific? And what we realize in the security domain, that's a very hard problem to solve. How do you know that when you sneeze, it's just a sneeze, that's no big deal, or hey, this could be something more serious, right? And so you need that context in order to understand it. And putting all that knowledge about the context to write an alert, it just doesn't work because the data sits in different places. It's not streaming at the same time where you can run it. So effectively, alerts are going to be imprecise, and you're going to have false positives. And it's just the nature of the beast. And you 90% of the alerts may be false positives, the 10% that you care about. But the answer is very hard to say, okay, I'm going to turn off the 90% of the alerts, right? You just can't tune it that way. So the only way to do it is to say, okay, whenever there's a sneeze, can we just go and do a complete MRI or, in a matter of minutes at a very low cost to really decide what that is? And that's the approach that we have taken. That's a bad analogy, but I think I'm still working on a good one. But the idea is let 1,000 alerts bloom, right? Just generate alerts on what you think could be problematic and let an AI agent figure out exactly whether it's real or whether it's not. So that's the approach that we've taken is not to go and turn off alerts. It's not to go ignore alerts. It's not to go spend a lot of time on detection engineering, because when you make your alerts too narrow, you're going to miss something. So the idea is to have broad coverage and let your AI agents that have infinite capacity go through all of that to say, hey, what's real and what's not. And I think that's how you get to, better security posture. And if you think about all the major breaches, by the way, right, the alert was there in many cases. I don't know the exact percentage, and I don't want to name specific breaches, but the alert was there, but just lost in the noise. And so that's why we've taken the approach that we've taken to solve this problem.
Yeah, and I think you're right on the issue of volume in the alert business and the fatigue coming from going through that manually and the fatigue coming from having to think of questions related to each alert and then answering that question by hand. I think those are all valid fatigue creators. From an approach standpoint, I think there are two sides of the coin in the sense of I could fast track the process of going through the alerts using the help of AI, or I could also trim down certain alerts based on variables if I have knowledge of them, right? And they both require different solution approaches, because ultimately the goal is to reduce the size of the haystack and then make the process of going through the haystack faster. You're on the side of make the process of going through the haystack faster. But you also alluded to the fact that the haystack could be reduced if there was unlimited amount of context and detection engineering principles applied. So I think that is also a approach. Maybe the world will be benefited if both approach combine into a single, and the modern SOC can take advantage of both techniques, because reducing the size does help. Going faster through the thing also helps. So I'm with you on that mindset.
And I love the haystack analogy. And our vision is to address both sides of the coin, right? And where we've started gives us insights into what's working and what's not working. And now we can take those insights and we feed that upstream to detection engineering teams with concrete recommendations on, hey, here's how you can turn off or modify these alerts to increase the efficacy of the alerts, because now we have the results of how good those alerts are or not. Right? So those insights are being fed upstream to reduce the haystack. And not only that, Ashish, we're also providing recommendations on, hey, what are some gaps that you have in terms of alerts that you're not generating from a coverage standpoint as well.
Correct.
Right? And so I think the question is, again, strategically, where do you start to get the insights? And then how do you expand from there? And again, I'm not saying this is the right approach or wrong approach.
No, you're absolutely
I'm just
right.
saying that's the approach that we took. Yeah.
You start where there is ample data. So you started in the right place. You can't start from a vacuum in that sense.
Yeah.
Right? So I think
but it's spot on.
Yeah. So I think a related topic to this issue of, I want to color the statement a little bit and be a little bit of a devil's advocate for the sake of this conversation, is many incidents happen when there was an alert and it was not, properly processed. The issue was not having the alert. The issue was not having the time to figure out how to respond to the alert. I think that was the characterization, right? There's also a side where it's not the issue of time. It's the issue of threat landscape evolves. New techniques have come up. An alert is not finely tuned to the new landscape. That means the context on processing the alert is not easy to grab. So I think there is that aspect of the equation for the semi-trained mind that's working as an analyst, right? So the question then becomes, what promise does the vision of AI SOC have on keeping up with this changing threat landscape so it can also address that portion of the gap on the finesse with which a human can actually process large volume of alerts? Like there's that issue of how does the AI space help with that? Maybe you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, we see it as two ways, and I'm just articulating what we heard from our customers, right? By taking the manual tedious tasks off the table of the security teams, those team members can now focus on, hey, let me do some more proactive threat hunting. Let me go and better understand, what are some emerging threat vectors and how do we build detections for those? And so we are enabling the team to freeing up time to focus on proactively thinking about unknown threat vectors or emerging threat vectors. The second piece that we are doing is from a product standpoint, can we enable rapid response for these emerging threat vectors? So imagine an advisory gets, you get a new CISA advisory, and you've both been practitioners, you know this. The moment something comes out, you get a note from the board to the CISO to the team, hey, this has impacted us, where are we exposed? We need to provide an answer to the board. Now imagine that whole process being automated with AI agents, where as these advisors are coming up, it's helping you in real time identify what is the impact to our organization and how can we quickly respond. So I think that those are the two ways I believe that an AI agent can really help in tackle known or emerging threat vectors. It comes down to, for us, is freeing up time and then enabling them to do these tasks faster.
So actually on that note, it reminds me of kind of where we started the conversation, Kamal, right? On up-leveling or elevating, right? The human analyst. So there's a couple of reports out there really talking about the role that AI SOCs are now playing in maybe making labor more efficient, right? So if you think about your traditional tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 SOC analysts, maybe you won't need any more tier 1 SOC analysts, right, with profit. So how do we think about the continued human analyst role, right, when customers buy an AI SOC?
Yeah, I don't have close enough view into how these level 1, level 2, level 3, or tier 1, tier 2, three analyst structures were formed, but I'm convinced it was formed to respond to alert volumes and how do we do basic triage and basic investigation, and then take the experts and have them focus on a level 3 proactive threat hunting or responding to threats. And what AI does is it makes your tier 1 analyst operate like a tier 3 analyst, right? Your onboarding process, your training process is so much faster. And frankly, when you think about it, nobody enters security to say, okay, what I'm going to do is spend all day, every day working through my queue of 25, 30, 40 alerts, writing queries, gathering data, closing out tickets. That's not security work, right? And so I think AI can truly accelerate careers for security team members by accelerating their knowledge and expertise and value to security teams. And I think that's the power that we see, and that's what we see in organizations, in our customers, and that's what we see. They tell us about the value of an AI SOC analyst. So I think that's going to be very, very exciting for security professionals, and how can you really embrace AI to accelerate your careers in security?
Yeah, I think you're not wrong about this issue of coming from practitioner mind for a second. There's this repetitive work which does not challenge people intellectually is not people's idea of being a hacker or being a defender. People's idea of that is rooted in creativity, which is further upstream in the proactive threat hunting, detection engineering, posture management lands. So I think AI is going to finally relieve some of the stress from the cyber world, is also my hope and expectation and belief at this stage in that regard. You briefly touched upon this fascinating topic. Oops, I think we may have lost Nancy because the meeting ended or something, but we can record and we'll edit this part out. So I think you briefly touched upon this idea of emerging threat response, going to an advisory and being able to help. I do believe there is future there. I do believe
Mhm.
I can help there, but would love to hear your product building chops on that side. Love to hear early conversations that you're having with from a product building standpoint, as well as from what customers are saying. What are the expectations in that scenario? Maybe you have something to double click there.
Yeah, it's super early, Ashish, is the honest answer. And we are iterating on it, working with a handful of design partners on what that means to them. So I don't have much more to report on that yet, but stay tuned, for some exciting product announcements on that front shortly.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. No worries at all. I'm looking forward to that space becoming a thing because I do believe it's a part of the future of security, whether you call it operations, whether you call it something else, doesn't matter. I think it's much needed because every single day there's a crisis happening, and that's the number one reason for people to lose sleep over. And especially around vacation times, in my practicing career, there was never a Christmas that I enjoyed for that reason. This, even the attackers know when to hit the pain button, essentially, right?
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, we have certain customers that want to go from an 18/5 coverage to a 24/7 coverage. And when they're looking at the staffing plans, they have to go from a 6-person team to a 12-person team, right? Spread around the globe.
Yeah,
And a lot of those pings that happen on late nights and weekends and in the middle of the night turn out to be false positives because that's just the nature of security, and it's just disruptive. And now imagine, and we have a couple of paying customers where we are their initial SOC analyst, gets every alert, and if we find it to be malicious, we'll go page them. We have pager duty, and then they'll go and they have a head start because they see all the investigation that's completely done. But now that same team, the same company, didn't have to hire 6 more analysts and manage a 24/7 to get to 24/7, right? They can do that with the existing team. And so this whole notion of achieving more and delivering better security outcomes with the same team is really becoming a reality with AI.
yeah, makes sense. So I guess we already sort of talked about one dimension of how AI will shape the future of security, which is the emerging threat response. Are there any other early thoughts that you want to share with the audience on where else AI will have a major impact? Now, it doesn't have to be operations, security in general. Maybe we sort of close the discussion with that kind of thinking and sort of talk about what recommendations you have for people who are on the cliff of going the AI way on SOC side or not.
Yeah, I think like security operations is just one use case for AI. There are amazing companies that are leveraging AI to streamline governance and compliance. And people talk a lot about filling out security questionnaires and how the process can be streamlined, leveraging AI, the penetration testing and automating that process. I think the way you go about doing SOC 2 compliance, there's lots of opportunities in security that I truly believe will be automated. I also think that markets that we take for granted, like a SIM, for example, is going to get disrupted with AI because AI makes it possible, for example, for you to have data spread out in multiple different data sources. You no longer have to take on the long, onerous process of taking all the long data and piping into one central SIM and paying based on volumes of data. So I think there's going to be lots of innovation. And these are just initial obvious ideas, Ashish. I think as AI continues to get, the foundational models continue to get better, I think there are use cases that I am not even imagining today in security that will be possible.
Yeah, no, fair point. I think I was smiling or chuckling when you were saying log centralization may not be a need of the future. I think there are games that are played in terms of egress costs and API calls and storage costs. If those games continue to be played the way they're being played right now, unless agentic and AI changes the economics of that game, I think it's anybody's game in terms of which way the data is going to be fetched and organized in that sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And to a point, I think you're right. We are seeing those security vendors play games in terms of how they're charging for what they do to optimize it. But
even cloud providers have exorbitant egress costs. So they will basically give you storage for cheap, but make it very hard to egress anything. So I think we need to see how this world evolves in the context of SIMs. I mean, you pay and kind of right now you kind of pay on both sides in SIMs. So I think there's some amount of disadvantage the SIMs have in that regard.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
Yeah. So I think to wrap it up, maybe 1, 2, or 3 pieces of takeaway for anybody who's sitting on the cliff of should I investigate the use of AI in my SOC, or how do I operationalize it? What are the recommendations that you would make, like from an adoption journey standpoint to a practitioner?
Yeah, I think and we do get some questions, and some security teams can be skeptical of AI. There's been a lot of promises that have been made to security teams in the past. Like, we completely understand that. And as you know, AI demos really well, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating, as they say. So, our concrete, tangible advice to customers or prospects is just go take it for a spin. The POV process should be fairly streamlined. And when you take it for a sim, and when you see for a spin, and when you see it in your own environment, what AI can do, it will really open your eyes to the possibilities. So that's our advice to folks who are thinking about AI, is to say it should not be a heavy lift to do a quick POV in your environment to really experience the power of AI firsthand.
Absolutely right. AI is not the monster you want to be scared of. You want to embrace it in the end. Awesome. Thanks, Kamal. Lovely having you on the pod, and we shall meet again soon.
Thank you for the tremendous opportunity. Super grateful.